In Tucson, Melody Johnson has pleaded guilty now to 2 counts of pouring bleach into coffee meant for her husband to drink.
Imagine waking up to the smell of coffee only to realise that the woman that you married has slowly been poisoning you. Or picture a well-known noblewoman who in the 1600s believed that bathing in the blood of young girls would help her to stay young. Today we're delving into 2 chilling cases of women who used deadly methods to try and gain the power or revenge that they so desperately craved. This is REDRUM, a series of unfortunate events. I upload 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a week, so make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. In 2023, Robbie Johnson suspected that his wife was poisoning him. He set up hidden cameras and he caught her red-handed. She was trying to kill him for the life insurance payouts. Here's how he uncovered her deadly secret. It was a morning like any other for Robbie Johnson, or so he thought. Living with his wife Melody in Germany whilst he was stationed out there with the Air Force, he was about to discover that the woman he shared his life with had been hiding this dangerous secret. Over the past few weeks, Robbie had been feeling quite strange, really unwell. He was experiencing things like dizziness, fatigue, nausea. The culprit, he would find out, was a cup of coffee. Something felt off. He realised that the taste wasn't quite right. And this wasn't the first time he'd noticed something strange about his morning cup of coffee. And soon his suspicions grew into something much darker. Robbie did suspect quite early on that his wife was poisoning him, but he needed to know for sure. So he took matters into his own hands. Setting up hidden cameras around their home, he placed one right above the coffee machine. He placed another in the laundry room, and he even put a third that was positioned in the hallway, having a bit more of a kind of extensive view of the house. These would capture Melody's every move. Robbie also used pool testing strips in his coffee. What he found was chilling. The coffee had high levels of chlorine. This was a confirmation of his worst fears. But Robbie wasn't done there. He needed concrete proof so that he could actually take action. After he first suspected Melody was poisoning him, he didn't want to confront her straight away. He wanted to have that undeniable evidence. And so he continued to take the coffee from her, pretending nothing was wrong, just so that he could gather more data and kind of make sure that the signs weren't coincidental. His decision to bide his time also tied in with this strategy of waiting until they returned to the US so that he could report the crime properly and without concern for a kind of retaliation from his wife. He waited until they moved back to Tucson before fully reporting the crime to authorities. According to investigators, Robbie believed that Melody had been trying to kill him, likely in an attempt to collect death benefits. The couple were already in the process of divorcing. They had a really rocky relationship. Things weren't good. Melody was arrested and the case quickly made headlines. She was caught on camera poisoning Robbie's coffee in 2 separate incidents, one on July 11th and one on July 18th, both in 2023. Now initially, she did face charges of attempted first-degree murder, but Melody eventually accepted a plea deal. She pled guilty to 2 counts of poisoning or adding harmful substances to food or drink. This was a much lesser charge than murder. She was actually only sentenced to 3 years of probation rather than prison. From what I could see, she got this really teeny tiny term because the amounts of poison were so small. It wasn't seen as though she was trying to kill him. But as far as I could tell, this is more so because she probably couldn't work out the amounts needed to do real damage. I saw that reported a number of times. Her intent may well have been murder. She just didn't get the dosage right. But as for what could be proven, it just wasn't something that the court could prove with regards to murder. In the late 1500s, Hungary was home to one of the most chilling and mysterious criminal women in history. Elizabeth Bathory, the so-called Blood Countess, was a noblewoman by birth. She was known for her wealth, for her beauty and for her power. But beneath the grandeur of this noble title that she held lay a darkness so terrifying it would become a legend. At the height of her power, Elizabeth ruled over vast estates, especially while her husband, Count Ferenc, was away as a soldier. He was away on duty. During his absences, the rumours began. Whispers of disappearances, gruesome deaths, and allegations that Elizabeth was responsible for the brutal sufferings of countless younger girls. Fair warning, this is pretty grim. It isn't super detailed just because there isn't the amount of information and detail given how old the case is, but it does involve children. The darkest accusations was that Elizabeth believed bathing in the blood of virgins would preserve her youth and beauty. This horrific practice is what she's known for most when she's remembered today. But what if there was another element to her crimes? Something far more subtle and insidious than physical torture alone. Poison. Some accounts, although less sensationalised than the blood bathing myth, suggest that Elizabeth might have used poison as one of her methods. According to certain reports, she would use poison to kind of weaken her victims, making them simply more susceptible to the horrors that awaited them. This method of incapacitation would have made her attacks far more calculated, giving her time to carry out the tortures slowly and without fear of being stopped or of them fighting back. Poisoning could also explain some of the strange illnesses that a number of the young girls suffered before disappearing. And in a world where a noblewoman's power and status could kind of shield her from justice, poisoning could be the perfect quiet weapon, untraceable, deadly, and very effective. But the details of Elizabeth's alleged poisoning remain murky because most of the focus of her trial and kind of legend centred on the physical violence, the bloodshed she inflicted. Even so, there are suggestions that she may have poisoned her servants, other victims even, or maybe used it as a way to control her inner circle, making them compliant or silencing their complaints about her actions. In 1610, after years of rumours about Elizabeth and her actions, she was finally arrested. The trial that followed revealed a horrifying picture of sadism, torture, and murder. One of the most chilling cases is the murder of a young servant girl called Caitlin Bennick. Her death is often spoken about as one of the key moments that led to Elizabeth's arrest. According to trial records and accounts from witnesses, Caitlin was a 16-year-old girl who was working as a servant for Elizabeth. She was reported to have been summoned to the private areas of the castle, where she was tortured and killed in a way that would become all too familiar in this case. Some accounts describe how the girl's skin was stripped from her body and how this was done before she was killed. The specific details of the murder do vary from source to source, but each of them suggests a pattern of violence that is consistent with other deaths reported at the castle. Some sources suggest that Elizabeth may have poisoned this young girl to weaken her before carrying out the physical torture. But as with many of her alleged murders, it's hard to know for certain what combination of methods was actually used. The murder of this young girl was one of the crimes that finally led to Elizabeth's downfall. Following her murder, other servants and villagers began to speak out, and because of that, a series of investigations were launched. The true number of victims remains unknown, but Elizabeth's trial documents outline numerous cases of similar brutality. According to witness accounts, she was responsible for up to 650 deaths of young girls. That number is disputed. Some historians believe it was more, some historians believe it was less. Still, the evidence found in her castle, the blood-soaked sheets, the torture devices, the mutilated bodies, all of that was plenty enough to condemn her. In the end, though, Elizabeth was sentenced to house arrest. And that's actually what happened. She spent the rest of her years confined to a room in her very lovely, very big castle until her eventual death in 1614. I know that's a little bit different to the cases that I usually bring you, but I was reading about that and I was just gobsmacked. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode, and I will see you in a couple of days for the next episode of REDRUM. Bye.